we're the last state in the union to finally get concealed carry. You know, I can't take the position that someone who looks like me or even someone white who lives in Cook County, I can't take that position that you should not register, because then I'm asking you to place your life on the line. I'm asking you to trust the government to protect you. And as a former cop who's responded, we often get there late. So I can't take that position.
That's Instructor Mike Brown out of Cook County, a veteran of the armed services, a retired police officer. He goes by Instructor Mike on YouTube, and he also runs Security Training Concepts. And I subscribed to him not long ago after seeing some of his videos pop up, and he had a conversation, a live stream with his audience, really going into detail about what they should or shouldn't do when it comes to the firearm registry, and not necessarily giving detailed recommendations, but rather in a way just laying out there what the reality is, especially in a county like Cook. So I chatted with him yesterday, everything about the issue of whether or not in the database when police pull you over, is it going to show that John Smith has or has not registered their firearm? What about the rhetoric that gun control advocates have? Do they show a level of ignorance of sorts? But we also talk about where we're at now in this whole situation, especially how the black community in Chicago is going to be impacted by the law, but also how they're going to be impacted by the enforcement of the law. So where are we at right now? Seems to be just the go-to question I had for Instructor Mike in our conversation yesterday.
Well, that's the thing. I totally understand that there are people who are choosing not to comply, and for understandable reasons. However, of the 102 counties in the state of Illinois, the majority of whom are not in support of this bill. I just happen to teach and happen to live in the county, Cook County, the biggest county, if you will, that is in support of this bill. And so, I see a call across the state. People are saying they're not going to comply. And they have the sheriffs and the state's attorneys who are supporting that. And that's great. That's what the state police did say in the hearings, that it's going to be subject to the jurisdiction of the state's attorneys to enforce the provisions of that bill. But in Cook County, they are most definitely going to enforce the provisions of that bill for those who do not comply. And so in good conscience, I can't suggest that people in Cook County, in Chicago, don't register, because you stand the chance of losing your freedom and your license.
Because, of course, you've got a Class A misdemeanor for the first offense and a Class 3 felony for second and subsequent offenses. So in the conversation I had yesterday with Instructor Mike, and a firearms instructor in Chicago and Cook County, what are the implications of this law on the black community in Chicago? Of course, you've got crime that's happening. He talks about the need for having tools to defend one's self. So what are going to be the implications of this law banning certain types of firearms in Chicago?
Well, unlike the other maybe 101 or 100 counties where the crime rates are not, let's just say the fear of crime is more than the actual occurrence of crime itself. And that would give or take depending upon where you are. I hear Peoria and Decatur and Quincy has some issues close to being St. Louis and stuff like that. But they all pale in comparison to Chicago, and we are in a literal war zone, even though crime happens in pockets. And so unlike in other counties where they carry it in support of the Second Amendment, in the event something happens, we live in the area where things happen. I'm just down the street from a popular a place where violence suddenly happens all the time. It's a place called O Block, So in Chicago, we need these weapons, and especially in the wake of the George Floyd riots and the COVID-19 things that were happening, and the pandemic and the fears of crime and possessions being taken, gun sales shot through the roof. People were not only just buying semi-automatic firearms, but they were buying these so-called assault weapons and assault rifles. And this is going to have disastrous results on the black community, because the Chicago police, and for good purposes or good intentions, I see, they're not responding as fast as they could, as fast as they used to. They're not responding to people calling for service and people calling for help, and so we have to defend ourselves. And so that's a unfortunate position to be in. The government is not helping.
So again, talking with Instructor Mike. He is a firearms instructor in Cook County, and you can find him on YouTube as well, Instructor Mike. But the question about how the law is going to impact citizens in Cook County who want to protect themselves. But what about enforcement of that? Is there going to be disproportionate impact on the black citizens in Cook County? And Instructor Mike lays it out. He essentially, spells out exactly what could possibly be happening with enforcement of this law.
Well, definitely for the law-abiding citizens, and so it would also depend on the interaction with law enforcement. I do as much as I can keep a pulse check on what comes in and out of the Layton Criminal Courthouse for bond court, central bond court. And I could see there being a heavy enforcement of the ban and of the registration, because the message has to be sent to kind of give other people or other counties an incentive to comply. And so I think that Cook County is going to be ground zero for a test case as to the enforcement. Because of the low numbers of registration. And this is not to encourage people. Please go on ahead and register if you're outside of Cook County, or if you're living in a county where enforcement is not going to be as much. But in Cook County, it's definitely you're going to start to see some arrest and some license revocations. And I think you've reported on the clear and present danger situation that happened in the wake of Robert Crimo, and how the state police revamped their clear and present danger system, and blanketly, just retroactively went back to anybody who ever had a report of those things, and suspended and revoked FOID cards and concealed carry licenses to try to right the ship, if you will. So if they can do that, I can see there being a heavy degree of enforcement, and we as black folks, I'm just going to lay it out on the table, we're going to be the first test subjects.
Well, especially if you consider it being in Cook County. Before we get to more of the conversation with Instructor Mike, he talked about low registration rates. And I do want to pull up, this is from yesterday, the FOID statistics, the Firearm Owner ID card statistics, 2.41 million, all right, 2.41 million FOID card holders. But if you look at the most recent firearms registration numbers from Illinois State Police, yesterday morning when we were on the program, it was at 6,100 people saying that they owned a banned firearm. And I'm refreshing it now because you can see that it has now gone up to 8,143 and about 24,300 total disclosures. That includes the firearms disclosures, accessory disclosures, and the ammunition disclosures. So total number of firearms, 15,877. What does that come out to? Not even two firearms per individual making a disclosure, and all of that number comes down to about 35% of FOID. Sorry, let me step back. 0.35% of total FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. So that is around 1/3 of 1 percentile. All right, so 0.35% of total FOID card holders saying that they have a banned firearm, telling Illinois State Police that they have a banned firearm. Who's registering? Could it be those in Cook County facing the implications of heavy enforcement of the law in Cook County by Illinois State Police or by prosecutors in Cook County? Could that be where we're seeing a lot of those who see it as prudent to register because they know it's going to be enforced? And what Instructor Mike is essentially saying is, in the rest of the state, where 90 plus sheriffs have said they're not going to enforce this, 90 plus state's attorneys say they're not going to make it a top priority, or however that breaks down, in those counties, people may feel safe saying they won't comply. You see the comments on social media all up and down. But for the reality in Cook County, as Instructor Mike is saying, That's not the case. They're going to have enforcement of this. He sees the black community in particular, and even the white community in Cook County, being test subjects of the law post January 1st. Because keep in mind, we also have not had any action from any of the courts. Checking the latest docket entry for the federal firearms licensees of Illinois, in their case, to try to delay that January 1st deadline, there has been no update to the docket since Friday, when the plaintiffs filed their opposition to a motion to dismiss the claim to delay that January 1st deadline. So, again, the courts haven't acted. You got less than 2 weeks, and looking at the statistics from Illinois State Police, of the 2.4 million firearm owner ID card holders, 0.35% have registered. Who is that that's registering? Maybe it's going to be the people in Cook County, thinking that this is going to be enforced there, where the rest of the state, it doesn't seem to be a top priority for enforcement. So back to Instructor Mike, talking about how police are going to interact with such information. If you recall, and again, those have been watching for some time now. You've been seeing us review the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, and you've got the ongoing questions of how police are going to interact with this stuff. So, LEADS is one of those databases where it's going to be populated, according to Illinois State Police, that the registration status of an individual is going to be posted. What does that mean exactly? Instructor Mike, a former police officer, breaks that down.
Yes and no. Having been a police officer and having operated this data system, I don't think it's going to report whether or not someone has failed to report it, unless the ATF happens to share the information, if they even have that information. When you go to purchase a firearm, or you purchased a rifle before, you filled out the ATF form 4473, and the ATF just happens to share that data with the Illinois State Police, they will then know who has or has not registered, or who has these so-called assault weapons, and then they would have to enter all that data into LEADS, where upon the running of a driver's license or the running of an Illinois registration plate, the name check or the plate check, if your license is attached to the plate, they would then get notice that you purchased this and you failed to register. That would be the only way that I could see something like that happening. Now, could they conduct a traffic stop? Absolutely. You've got Pennsylvania versus Mims, which gives them, United States Supreme Court case, which gives them access to the car, alleging that there's an officer safety issue for the driver and for the officer. And then you have Maryland versus Wilson, which gives that same permission extended to the passengers. So there's legal ways that they can get inside of the car. And if they should so happen to find a so-called assault weapon or assault rifle in your vehicle, then if they do a check through LEADS to see if a registration has been entered, then that would trigger any type of penalties or any type of arrest for the failing to register. So that's where I could see the issue. And traffic stops happen all the time. I mean, people follow me on social media. I get pulled over all the time for things, driver's license plates and stuff like that. Of course, I don't have any issues with the police, but that happens. And so, yeah.
Now, the question also I posed to Instructor Mike, who, by the way, I saw pop up in the live chat. Good to see him there. But we chatted yesterday in the afternoon hours just about where we're at in this process with less than 2 weeks. But I also wanted to get his reaction about, some of the gun control advocates and how they talk about these things. Last week, Governor J.B. Pritzker said he believes that it's widely understood what people need to register. And then he started talking about automatic assault weapons and high capacity magazines, he says. So when a gun instructor hears those types of things, what does he think? Here's Instructor Mike on that.
Well, Governor Pritzker doesn't strike me as someone who knows a lot about firearms, but it is a issue that he can use for the Democratic platform. It's just politics. I'm not conservative or liberal, Republican or Democrat. I'm independent. And so I could see them using that as a platform, as they always do, against firearms and things like that. The problem is he has a bunch of state police who are around him to protect him, as does Mayor Johnson and all of the elected officials who have that type of budget to be able to have that. But he is not necessarily concerned with the crime that we have to deal with and have to try to defend ourselves. I mean, town of Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, the police are not required to protect you. And so that's why, you have the high spike in people purchasing firearms and people having rifles, the riots and things like that. So I could see him taking those positions, and he doesn't strike me as somebody who really knows, nor do I even think he cares, and he has the money and the status to not even have to care. He doesn't live where we live. So
another question that I had for Instructor Mike yesterday is what he's hearing from those he has connections with, those who he communicates with on a regular basis, his listeners, his subscribers at his YouTube channel. What is he hearing from those individuals on a day-to-day basis?
They just want to know if they have to register, what they have to register, how can they transport the firearms, are they going to get in trouble if they don't register. But I haven't heard too many people say they're not going to register. That would be like them telling on themselves. They're not really fans of doing that. So it's mainly what can I buy? What can I buy? And so now you can't even purchase a so-called assault rifle or weapon or anything like that. So that's out of the question. Mainly it's just pistol questions. They've always had a fear of the police. They've always had a fear of being unjustly pulled over for no particular reason or just for enforcement action. So I haven't heard of a spike in those things because that fear has always been present and they've just had to just deal with it. And it's been unfortunate. And like I said, I could see Cook County, and especially in South Side and West Side neighborhoods, I could see those being first test case for enforcement.
And Instructor Mike, also I asked about just some last thoughts that he has, where we're at in all of this.
No, I mean, I just understand that my opinion is not a popular opinion. We would like to, in the Second Amendment community, be one team, one fight. But, just like with any war, any battle, or anything like that, I'm a veteran of the military, the Army, you have to consider the theater where you're going to operate these little these mini battles and things like that. And in Chicago, I can't take the whole position that everyone should not comply, because we actually need the tools that the last state in the union. We're the last state in the union to finally get concealed carry. I can't take the position that someone who looks like me or even someone white who lives in Cook County, I can't take that position that you should not register, because then I'm asking you to place your life on the line. I'm asking you to trust the government to protect you. And as a former cop who's responded, we often get there late. So I can't take that position.
Again, thanks to Instructor Mike for taking some time with me yesterday to chat about these issues. I will definitely be connecting with him again in the near future as we watch this thing get implemented January 1st. Because again, as of right now, no action from the U.S. Supreme Court. You had Judge Stephen McGlynn in the Southern District deny summary partial judgment against the law in the Langley case, with the federal firearms licensees of Illinois case in the Southern District still pending. I'll be tracking that to see if we get something happen today. So be watching me on X. Just follow along, Bishop on Air, so you can get the latest there. All right. Stay tuned. Of course, we've got plenty more here with Bishop on Air.